All right, time now to talk Giants football, and John Harbaugh introduced as the head coach of the Giants, hot off the presses. Let's talk with the guy that I'm sure was there, was asking some of those questions, and I know is going to be intricately around this coach. He works right inside the headquarters. It's the one, the only from Giants.com, John Schmeelk. What's up, John? How are you?
Gentlemen, what's going on? I am from said facility right now. How are you?
Loving it.
Beautiful.
Loving
a beautiful studio.
My pride is coming through here, John. I love this hire. I won't lie. And one of the things that I got from the press conference, and I wonder if you felt the same thing, is, and I know a lot about John Harbaugh. I've watched him coach all these years, but I don't know him intimately, in that press conference space. He just won the room over to me in those first 30 seconds. The way he carries himself, the way that he speaks, the comfortability of being in front of a microphone. I was incredibly impressed by him yesterday.
I think whenever anybody goes in front of a mic in a situation like that, the people that do the best are the ones that are comfortable in their own skin. And I think you see how John Harbaugh talks, and he is uniquely a Harbaugh, all right? The energy, the enthusiasm, the positivity. Like, that's who he is. It's not a show. It's not a game. He's not trying to put a front up. That's just who he is. And I think for someone that had so much success over 18 years, just one season in those 18 years with the Ravens, winning fewer than 8 games, you gain a confidence in who you are and what you believe in, and that what you believe in works. And when you have that confidence, you can go in front of a mic and talk with that sort of forcefulness and personality that we saw from John Harbaugh. And I think that's going to get not just the media and the city, but more importantly, eventually your players to buy in exactly what you're selling.
John, since Tom Coughlin left, there's been a lot of head coaches that have cycled through for the Giants, but I feel free to clarify this. This is sort of builds into my question. It seemed like it was a full court press to get John Harbaugh. Tom Coughlin, Eli Manning, The Giants pulled out all the bigwigs. It was like your guys' 100th year anniversary podcast you were doing. You start grabbing those guys to go full court press to go get Harbaugh, for Pete's sake. So my question off all of it is, has this ever happened before? Was there sort of a uniqueness to Harbaugh's credentials being available and the Giants sort of sensing this and saying, we need to pull out all the stops? Has Eli Manning or Tom Coughlin or others attempted in the past with some of these other head coaching candidates that the Giants have had to do this, or is this a unique situation?
Yeah, ironically, well, I'll answer this in 2 ways. One, yes, it's a unique situation because John Harbaugh, pardon me, I know I was going to do that at least once.
That's going to happen.
John Harbaugh is a unique head coaching candidate, right? Like, how many times do you get a guy that has 18 seasons of 17 of those 18, 8 wins or more, 6 division titles, Super Bowl championship, go down the list of the accomplishments. It was to the point where, guys, look, this wasn't the teams interviewing John Harbaugh and John Harbaugh selling themselves to the teams. This was the teams meeting with John Harbaugh and the teams selling themselves to John Harbaugh. It was like, it was flipped. It was opposite. So, yes, in that way, this was unique. While, did the Giants have to make sure they got their guys when they, hired Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and Brian Dable? Sure. But this was not like a quarter of the league trying to break down the door to hire those guys the same way everyone was with Harbaugh. So, in that way, yes, unique, different. But I think the unique part about that is that Harbaugh was doing his homework on the Giants. So, I just did and it's up there right now and on all the Giants platforms, YouTube channel, app, website, all that stuff. I did 20 minutes with Tom Coughlin, which is up there right now, and he was great. And after Harbaugh lost a job at Baltimore, he tells a story on the podcast. Harbaugh, Coughlin reaches out to Harbaugh to text him, just, I hope you're doing well. They're friends. They had taken a trip overseas with the military back in like 2010, 2009. And they were just going back and forth. And then John Harbaugh texts him back and he says, hey, can we talk? Then they get on the phone. So Harbaugh then starts quizzing him on the Giants, right? And this was before he even met with Chris Mara and did that whole thing over the weekend ago. Mm-hmm. And so it was really John Harbaugh that in a lot of ways reached out to Coughlin specifically to talk about the Giants. In the same way, John Harbaugh reached out to Peyton Manning to get Eli's number to talk to Eli about the Giants. So this was John Harbaugh basically, and eventually I think Brian Dable spoke to John Harbaugh as well about his time here with the Giants. So it was John Harbaugh doing his homework on the organization and making calls to all the people that know this organization best so he could figure out if this was the place for him.
John, one of the interesting things that I witnessed in watching that press conference, and I wasn't in the room, but you can certainly give me that experience. So it was in the big bubble, the indoor facility, which Boy Green and I have both been in. So we know exactly where they were standing and where this was all set up. Throngs of media. And in the back of the room were players. And the players apparently were cheering him on at points during it. So it sounded like the media was clapping, but my understanding, it was mostly the players that were clapping. So give me your read on that and what that actually was like.
Yeah, it was, I would say, about, 12 to 20 players, 15-ish, somewhere in that range. I didn't count them. And I think it was just mostly the guys that were in town, like a lot of the big names who were away training or on vacation or whatever. Like Jackson Dart wasn't there, no Dexter Lawrence, no Brian Burns, guys like that. But a lot of the guys that stayed local, some guys that are rehabbing or just live, in and around New Jersey, came to the facility. And yeah, they were there. And, I thought the times that Harbaugh got most excited during the press conference when he kind of looked in their direction and was kind of talking to them directly a little bit.
Yes.
And he's like, right, guys? And they're like, yes, coach. Yes, coach. And you could already see the level of respect that the players had for him from when he addressed them during the press conference, that they immediately were reacting. Yes, coach. Yes, coach. We're with you. Yes, coach. And I think the best players want a coach like John Harbaugh because he's going to demand a lot from them, and that's going to get the most out of them. And, of course, the team after that. So, yeah, I think the players are very excited. And I think you saw the impact that hiring a coach like Harbaugh will have on the locker room, given, how enthusiastic they will be to get with his specific program.
There was another little fascinating, fun thing that I want to get to, and then we'll get into some of the semantics of the relationship and the hierarchy, which are things that certainly have come up over the last week. Joe Schoen and John Harbaugh obviously took some pictures together. All right. And in one of the shots that I saw, I think I caught it on ESPN I guess it was sometime this morning. Harbaugh and Schoen are standing next to each other and they're doing the smiley picture with the Giants logos behind him. And Harbaugh gets up on his tippy toes because Schoen's a little bit taller than him to make himself a little taller. And it's like back and forth. I was like, this really shows this crazy guy's competitive fire and his kind of comfortability again, being around these guys that really he didn't know before this. Talk about that a little bit. I thought that was
look, you're 100% right. And I got a story from Ian O'Connor, who was also on the John Settle podcast, who is very tight with Harbaugh. He went to his house back in 2016 to do a big story on both John and Jim. It's still up if you guys Google search.
I watched the whole interview, so you don't have to repeat it.
It's great. Well, there's a huge written story in 2016 for ESPN that's there. You guys can go check that out. And he tells a story. When he gets there, John takes him out to the backyard, and as they're starting to chat, they're shooting baskets. There's a basketball hoop back there. They're shooting. And Ian's like, I was making more shots than him. And John got pissed. He was mad to the point where Ian tells the story on the podcast that I started missing on purpose because I didn't want to piss off my interview subject before I have this long interview with him. And, Harbaugh, he told John this eventually, and John's like, oh, you weren't missing on purpose. Yeah.
He didn't believe him.
He was. So eventually John takes him inside because he's not beating him in hoops. So he brings him inside home. It goes to this shuffleboard thing that he has on the second floor, and he wipes the floor with Ian. It's 50-4, and Harbaugh keeps keeping track. He's tallying every time every round. All right, I'm up 90-2. I'm up 100 to 16. And eventually Ian's like, dude, you beat me. I get it. Enough. But that's what the Harbaugh family is, from the dad, who was also there, seems like a great guy, to Jim, to John. They are just, everything is a competition. And I think that's how these coaches try to get the most out of their players, by challenging them to compete every day to get better.
Again, we're speaking with John Schmeelk, the do-it-all man for the New York Giants, who somehow has time in the day to hopefully sleep a little and also do an interview with us, which is always great. John Schmeelk here. John, how big, you mentioned it earlier, right? Half the league was after John Harbaugh, and for good reason. Super Bowl winning coach, 600 winning percentage. He's just been terrific. But with half the league chasing him and the Giants landing him, that is a massive celebration, a euphoric win for the Giants, who, the Jets and Giants don't compare very often, but the last 15 years, we've both had our fair share of struggles here. How big of a piece was Jackson Dart's presence on this team in helping sell John Harbaugh to this? Because there was a lot. The Titans were lining up. The Falcons were lining up. They wanted to talk to him, and the Giants were able to close the deal and make sure that he didn't leave the building. How big of a piece, whether from the Harbaugh presser or from, your perspective, that having Jackson Dart here helped sell that and maybe seal the deal here?
Yes, I think there were three parts of this. One was the history of the franchise, and I think that does mean something to the Harbaughs. He's brought that up many times, and just the aura that's the New York Football Giants. So I think that was one. Two was ownership, and I think that might have been the most important part of it, right? If you're a coach, you want to have an ownership group that you respect, is going to be patient, and you can work with. And John Harbaugh had a really good relationship with John Mara from their time in the competition committee. So those two guys, really good relationship. Those are the first two. And then the third part was the roster. And the roster always starts with the quarterback, right? And that's the most important part. That's the leader of the team. And John Harbaugh said it during the press conference. If you don't, the quarterback's kind of important, guys. And if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a shot. And I think he believes he is a quarterback here. He spent about 2 hours with him when he was in the building earlier in the week, last week, rather, I should say. And they had to pull him out of there. Those guys could have talked football for hours. So a huge deal. And, if he didn't believe that he could win with Jackson Dart, I do not believe John Harbaugh would be here.
One of the issues was this hierarchy thing, and it led to what sounded like a couple extra days of negotiating to make sure the contracts were right so that John Harbaugh could sign on the dotted line. I'm glad the Giants were able to work that out. The Giants, as you mentioned, John, are a very traditional organization. I mean, they have been traditional. They have a great tradition. They've won championships together, and they've done it a certain way. And that certain way has typically been coach reports to GM. It sounds like in this deal now, John Harbaugh will have direct access to John Mara and report directly to ownership rather than have to go through the GM to get to ownership. It's semantics. John really played it down a lot in this press conference, and I don't blame him for doing so. It sounded like that was the same arrangement he had in Baltimore, and he just wanted to continue on the same path. Comment on that, and was there truly a power struggle here, or do you think really this was just a matter of just getting it right on paper?
It is my belief that the Mara family, once they had the handshake agreement, was not going to let this thing fall apart. So whatever they were going to have to do to get this done, they would have gotten it done first and foremost. And both, you mentioned John Harbaugh, Joe Schoen also downplayed it. Like, look, yeah, I mean, yes, everyone, and I was happy that everyone kind of just, recognized that, all right, John Harbaugh has the final say here. If there's like one group says one thing, one group says the other, and Harbaugh will have final say here. And look, given his success and history and time in the league, I understand that. And that is different than what the Giants have had in the past. Even when Tom Coughlin was here, Jerry Reese and Ernie, of course, he had final call on who the Giants would draft. So that part is a little bit different. But I've been saying this to everybody else, guys. If you get to the point where your GM and your head coach are like really on opposite sides of the fence on something, that's a failure of process.
Right.
And I think the most important part of this here, and one of the first things John Harbaugh talked to us when we did our one-on-one with him, with Sean O'Hara, was that, look, this is a team, and we are going to work together. We're going to, everyone is going to be running down the same path together. And I think that's something Joe Schoen stressed, that this is going to be very collaborative, and these guys are going to work together to come to a decision that is best for the Giants. That's not just one person's decision. So that's why I think both guys downplayed it. They don't think that clause or whatever you want to call it in the contract is ever going to have to be activated, because you build a consensus, you collaborate, and you have an agreement together on what's best for the team. And I think that's how this is going to go. I will comment very briefly on the separate report. That's not so much different than what Tom Coughlin had when he was here. Like, Jerry Reese couldn't just fire Tom Coughlin. Like, ownership was going to fire Tom Coughlin, right? So it's not like when Tom Coughlin was here and he had all the success that he was just subservient to the general manager. Did he have full control over the draft? No. But when Tom Coughlin got let go, that was ownership and John Mara that let Tom Coughlin go. It was not Jerry Reese. So that separate report, not so much different than what, in my opinion, at least, than what it was like here at the end when Tom was here. But the final say on the roster stuff with the coach, that was a little bit different, that they managed to figure out. But to your point, I don't think that's ever going to come down to really being put into effect, because I think Joe Schoen worked really well with Brian Daboll in terms of getting the type of players that fulfilled his vision as a coach, and he'll do the same thing with John Harbaugh now that he's here.
John, we sort of have two dueling things here, right? So again, on one hand, the Giants have made the playoffs twice in the last 14 seasons. So like, expectations have to be whatever that is for that recent history. On the other hand, John Harbaugh, basically every season of his Ravens tenure has been awesome. Like, a bad year for John Harbaugh is 8-8. So he's been really good for a long time. And also, we're seeing these first-year coaches, freaking Mike Vrabel this weekend. And I know it's not his first time ever being a head coach, of course, but his first run here in New England as the head coach, they're in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson was just in the divisional round, and they were this close and shoulda, coulda, woulda been there. So what
Dan Quinn last year with the Commanders, same 100%. Deal, right?
NFC Championship game, you're 1,000%. So how do you battle those two dueling things here? Because Giant fans like freaking Harbaugh. Let's go back to the playoffs. Let's make a run. Let's go do something. But also, well, it hasn't been as great recently for the Giants. How do you balance those things to beep, boop, bop? What's the E equals MC squared of what expectations should be for the Giants in 2026?
Well, John Harbaugh didn't exactly tamp down those expectations either, talking at his press conference yesterday. Basically like, well, I think we have a roster to win. Now, I don't think that's win a Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. But should the expectations be that we get to December, that when they put those big playoff graphics up, that the Giants are in the hunt column or in the wild card column? Yeah. I mean, I think that's what the expectation is. I think if you look at a lot of the advanced metrics, some of the efficiency metrics, DVOA, even something as simple as point differential, the Giants were better than a 4-win team last year, right? They were probably more like a 6 or 7 win team, I think is probably where you would put them. If everything, you're not going to win all those close games at the end, but if you win a couple more of those, I think you're probably around 6 or 7 wins, something like that. So what, you got to win 2 or 3 more games to get to 10 or 9 to try to challenge for a playoff spot? I think that's realistic based on what the talent is on the roster. You hope Jackson Dart takes a jump in his second year. John Harbaugh, of course, gets the most out of the roster in terms of what it's going to look like. So look, I think the expectation is that the Giants are competing for a playoff spot next year. I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think that's John Harbaugh's expectations, and I don't think fans' expectations should be any different. But I think it is important to point out, guys, that a lot of times this first year of a head coach, he's figuring out what players can help him, what players are going to fit in the program, what players don't fit in the program, right? So I do think there's a feeling out process too in the first year of a head coach, that a lot of times there's more changes after your first year than before your first year as a head coach, because you actually get to interact with these guys close up and you figure out, all right, who's a John Harbaugh guy, who's not a John Harbaugh guy, and then you kind of go from there.
John, Boy Green mentions, the Patriots as an example of a team, boom, that popped right to the top. Obviously, they have a chance to get to the Super Bowl. One of the things the Patriots did on top of, kind of having that seemingly franchise quarterback in place, maybe like the Giants do, we'll see, was they went into free agency and they spent more than any other team this year. So let's talk about the juiciness of this. Will the Giants spend? And this is a guy I want to ask you about in particular, because when in college we bring in a coach, we say that guy's going to go out and recruit. Well, in the pros, it's free agency, but it's recruiting. And I like the idea of Tyler Linderbaum joining the Giants. The Giants could use a little help in the center of that offensive line. So let's talk about what John Harbaugh might bring, quote, as a recruiter. And will the Giants be willing to spend during the offseason for some free agents to try to build a roster that is wild card or playoff worthy?
Yeah, and again, I think, too, when you look at those teams that go for last to first, right? What did you have? Jaden Daniels blew up. Drake May blew up. Caleb Williams took a big step. So I think a lot of this on how well Jackson Dart plays in year 2 also, right? In terms of the money part of it, though, the Giants don't have a ton of cap space this offseason right now, but they can create a lot more if they decide to renegotiate contracts, let go of certain older players. So you can create whatever space you need to do work. So will they be willing to spend? Absolutely. I think when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract, that's when you get aggressive, right? You try to spend some money. You have money to spend because the quarterback's not making a ton of cash. And, that's why you go trade for Brian Burns, right? That's why you go out there, you sign Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland. They had the 5th overall pick in the draft too, right? That should add a impact player right away. So, yeah, I think they'll be willing to spend. Linderbaum's going to be very expensive now. I think John Michael Schmitz did play pretty well last year, and I think both Schmitz and Linderbaum are center-only players. I don't think either of those guys are going to be able to play guard. So I do think that's a big decision if you make it. I have no idea what the interest level would be there. Because I've read that Linderbaum wants like $20 million a year. Like that's the type of money he's looking for. And for a center, that's pricey when you're paying John Michael Schmitz, what, 2 on his rookie contract. So, but maybe a guy like Patrick Ricard, who's kind of that offensive lineman fullback combo. He's a free agent this year. That could be a guy that I think brings a certain amount of physicality and play style that John Harbaugh would want to bring to the Giants. But overall, will the Giants, I think, be aggressive in free agency, bringing in the type of players to remake the roster in John Harbaugh's image? That would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, sorry, Lurch. I guess Linderbaum's going to have to go to a different part of the state. The Jets, perhaps, baby. We got money to burn. We got money to burn, baby.
Centers were inexpensive, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, right now, this just goes to show this is how Linderbaum even became a free agent. This is a random side story, right? Creed Humphrey's the highest paid center in football at $18 million per year. Ravens had to decline the fifth-year option because the fifth-year option was significantly more than the highest paid center in football. They're like, we can't do this. We have to decline it. And now
is that what the fifth-year option was? Was it that much for him?
Yeah, it was $23 million. And
because you know what? Because they put the tackles in that equation,
100%, which is the same thing for franchise tag, and it's even worse. Right. If the Ravens were like, boy, you can't fifth-year option him, the franchise tag for an offensive lineman is $27 million. That's $9 million more than the highest paid center. Of course, the Ravens can't franchise tag him, but because of all this hoopla, a really good player is like 25 years of age is going to hit the market. So it's a unique situation. It's good for the 31 other teams, not good for the Ravens. But if I'm Linderbaum, I use my leverage to hit the open market and create a bidding war. Highest bidder, come on down and we'll see. So to me, I think that's going to be fascinating here. Another big piece of this puzzle, John, is the support staff around John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
And, there's been a lot of great reporting. You mentioned Ian O'Connor, who you had on the podcast. I love Ian. We've had him here on the show. Another goodie. I love Gary Myers. I got a bunch of his books behind me. And Gary Myers dropped quite a nugget on social media. And I went, what in the hell is going on here? That the defensive coordinator for John Harbaugh could be former Jets head coach Rex Ryan, who has interviewed twice over the last 5 years. People may not know this, for defensive coordinator roles under Sean Payton, the defensive coordinator role with him with the Broncos, and then with the Cowboys, he interviewed for the DC job over the last 5 years. But he hasn't been in the league in a decade. That was the last time he was a head coach of the Buffalo Bills. So Rex Ryan, John Harbaugh, Baltimore reunited, and it feels so good. How does it make you feel, Schmeelk, that instead of jet green, it could be giant blue?
Look, I've seen too many things in the National Football League to rule anything out of hand. That would surprise me. I think if they hired Rex Ryan, I think Brandon Jacobs would fly up from the South and run through the wall like the Kool-Aid guy and try to pull him out of the building. As you guys well know, there is no love lost between Brandon Jacobs and Rex Ryan. And there still is no love lost between those two, is my understanding. That would surprise me. I think there are other strings to attach in terms of other, defensive-minded coaches that have worked for John Harbaugh before. You're talking about Walker, who was with Tennessee last year. You look at Weaver, who was with Miami last year.
Zach Orr, right?
Zach Orr, who was with Baltimore last year. There are some rumors that the Giants might want to interview Jim Leonard, who's the secondary coach for the Broncos. The secondary
Green wants him for the Jets. Don't say that too loudly.
The Cowboys also interviewed him, by the way. So that's another competition the Jets are going to have. Durante Moore,
Durante Jones,
thank you. Yeah, the assistant.
Cowboys, Giants, and Vikings. Can you guys back off our guys here? What's going on?
So look, I think right now, guys, there's a large shortage of really good offensive assistant coaches that are out there that people can hire, like Clint Kubiak, Shieldhouse from the Rams, your former offensive coordinator,
Mike LaFleur
from the Rams. But there's that tree's being picked clean. There's just not a lot of offensive coaches, but there are a lot of really talented defenses coaches out there for teams looking for DCs or even a head coach who you want to promote from a defensive coordinator spot, right? So I don't think there'll be any shortage of qualified defensive coaches that the Giants can talk to fill that DC spot.
John, 3 key free agents for the Giants going into this offseason: Flott, Wan'Dale Robinson, Illuminor. Do you think the Giants are going to sign all 3? Do you have a favorite couple? What do you think the thought process will be here in terms of making decisions on those 3 guys?
It's a good question. It is important to note, I think, that Jermaine Illuminor did play for John Harbaugh the first couple years of his career. So there is a connection there.
Wow. Yeah.
Now that was a long time ago, and he was and by the way, this is not me speaking out of turn. Jermaine Illuminor has told me this himself. He sucked when he was with Baltimore. He was not a very good player. So and he has said that to me. I was a bad football player. I was not good. So I don't know what that, does John see him as the guy that was with him then? Does he see him as the guy that he is now? I have no idea. But I think that's important to note. He's going to be expensive too. He's a starting offensive tackle. You're looking at what? 20 million, 18 million, minimum. Yeah. So that gets expensive. Wanda Robinson almost had 100 catches and 1,000 yards last year. That probably starts at 15, right? And how high does it go after that? I don't know. What's Malik Neighbors' status coming back from that injury, right? How many wide receivers do you have to bring? Is it Robinson and somebody else? So that's interesting. And then who's the third guy you gave me? Flott?
Yeah, Cordell Flott. Yep.
Yeah, look, Flott was probably their best corner last year. which is, saying something. Paulson Debo battled some injuries, but Flott was probably their best cover guy. And as you guys well know, good corners don't come cheap. Where does that start at? 15? For a guy like Flott, who's, coming off his rookie contract. So, and it could go higher than that. Teams are flush with cap space, and the free agent class is not very strong either. So these things could get expensive quickly. I would be surprised if they had the money to bring back all three, just from a financial perspective. I know they like all the players. I'm sure they'd love to. I'm always one to say you can't have enough good offensive linemen. So I would be, probably hesitate most in letting Jermaine Illuminor walk out the door. But with the wide receiver position and Neighbors coming off injury, can you let Wanda Robinson walk? So I think this is tricky. And I think, throw Micah McFadden in the mix too. He was a good linebacker before he got hurt. He's a free agent also. So combining maybe Harbaugh's want to bring in some guys that he's familiar with bringing back the guys the Giants had on the roster last year that I like, I mentioned right now, at least limited cap space, it's going to be an interesting puzzle that Joe Schoen and John Harbaugh are going to have to put together when they make those decisions this offseason.
John, my final one here. Much to the dismay of my partner on the screen, the Giants pick 5th overall. He wanted a much higher selection than that at the end of the draft.
I warned everybody they were not going to pick first. Like, it just was not going to happen with the way that late season schedule was.
Yeah, poor Manchild. So anywho, Jets move up. Thanks, suckers. Anywho, we picked number 2 overall. You don't. But yes, Giants 5th overall. Where do you go from here? Because, man, you look at the Giants roster and you could see, you mentioned a 5th overall pick. You expect that to be an impact player. You could see that on offense. You could see that on defense. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go here. As always, it probably depends on who goes where in front of you to determine your direction. But what are your early thoughts, John? Because you kill it, obviously, in the draft game with you and Tony Pauline and everybody.
Yeah. We have our draft season podcast. People should check that out. We actually just recorded our Shrine and Senior Bowl preview. That'll post next couple of days. So there are not a lot of blue chip prospects in this draft class. I mean, there's just not. There's not a Malik Neighbors. There's not a, Roma Dunze. There's not a Brock Bowers even. There's not, an Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Like, those blue chip guys, in my opinion, are really not in this class, right? So I think, the guys we're talking about is maybe the highest graded players in this draft class. Arvell Reese, an off-ball linebacker. Caleb Downs, safety. Jeremiah Love, running back, right? Are there some good players like Reuben Bain? Is he going to be a good edge rusher? Sure. He also reportedly is like 32-inch arms. So, like, that's going to scare some teams off. Keldrick Faulk's going to be a good player. Was not very productive this year in terms of sacks. Carnell Tate, the wide receiver at Ohio State, really good player, but is he like Jeremiah Smith? He's not that. Like, people argue with me that he might just be a really high-end 2 in the NFL, not even a 1, right? But he's probably going to be a top 10 pick just because of the nature of the draft class. It doesn't mean I love Carnell. He's a good player, but he's not a Malik Neighbors type. You know what I mean? So you have a couple offensive linemen that are okay. The Lomu kid out of Alfano kid out of Utah, part of Lomu's his teammate. You have Maui Noah out of Miami, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick. But are these guys like Penei Sewell level prospects? Probably not. So I think the Giants will go a bunch of different ways. If you don't sign Jermaine Illuminor, could you pick an offensive tackle there? Sure. I think they could use off-ball linebacker help. I don't think Arvell Reese will get to him. I would consider picking Sonny Styles as the top 10 pick. I think he's that good of a player. He's really, really good. But again, off-ball linebacker, right? So I don't think there are easy answers here at 5. I think this is going to be a deal where people think they know who's going to go where in this draft class. I don't think anyone's going to have a clue. And I think a lot of draft teams are going to have different draft boards and have these players ranked very differently. And I'll be very interested to see what this top 10 looks like once we get past the All-Star games, the Combine, the Pro Days. I think a lot is going to look very different now than when we get to draft night.
Yeah. Well, the one thing we do know is who's going to go first. After that, it's a total crapshoot.
I think we'd all be very surprised if the Raiders do not pick their quarterback. Given,
I'd be fine with it. I'm fine.
Like half the organization was slobbering on the sidelines during the national championship game.
They were all there drooling.
But again, I just want to make this clear. If they want to get freaky, I'm fine with it at number 2. You want to do something different? Feel free, Raiders. Do it. Yes.
John Schmeelk.
Now here's the question: do you want Tyler Simpson at like your like middle like pick 16 or wherever you're picking with your
which I did see
pick?
in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft? Tyson going there.
Yes.
The thing that scares the heck out of me, and it's this: Rich Cimini had the great nugget. Shout out to Rich, who does a great job for ESPN. The quarterback history of people with less than 20 college starts, which Ty Simpson would fall in that category, is abysmal.
And that's why Dante Moore went back to school, by the way, because he only has 20 starts exactly.
Right. So, Cam Newton, hey, that worked out pretty well, a league MVP and all that. But you look at a lot of the other guys of Mac Jones and man, I had the list up earlier. Like, man, Kyler Murray, yeah, 100%. You look through the group and it's like, ugh. So, no, I'm not rushing to draft Ty Simpson. If he's there at 33, which is a great spot to be in, the first pick of the second round, who knows if that'll happen with quarterbacks and supply, demand, and that sort of thing. If he's there at 33, let's chat about it. But 16, I think if I'm the Jets, hey, you know what, John, if you could talk a little less about Sonny Styles, would love if he would just fall there to 16. So
I'm not sure he's getting past the Cowboys at 12, my friend. I wouldn't put that in pen there, but I think the Cowboys are going to pick a defensive player there, and there's a good chance it could be Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles, depending on which one is there.
That's disappointing. So yeah, I'm going to punt on Ty Simpson for now. But thanks, Ty. Appreciate you.
Well, I like your patience, Boy Green, considering that you really do need a QB. That's going to be an interesting offseason.
And by the way, I agree with you. I don't think Simpson's tape is good enough to be picked at 16, to be honest with you. I don't.
Be wise. Get 2 impact players in the first round and then go from there, Yep. Maybe the Jets could even trade. I mean, maybe, I don't know if anybody's going to trade out for
but everyone wants to trade. But who wants to trade?
It feels like a year. This feels like a year where everyone wants to trade out and get some more assets.
That is correct. And no one's going to want to trade up. You're absolutely right.
Right.
How much are you willing to pay Malik Willis?
To be honest, you know what? They're doing this whole Green Bay Packers thing down there with Jeff Hafley and John Eric Sullivan. They can have him. He has 6 starts, man. I'm not doing. Someone's going to. Someone is absolutely unequivocally going to do it. Where they're going to give the bag to Malik Willis, and God bless. Is Matt LaFleur? Is that part of the package? Is he coming with him? Oh, he's not. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, so Miami land. Malik Willis
could be Fields 2.0. I mean, there's a lot of weird similarities between those guys. Like
6 starts, 6, and I'm not just talking about 6 this year, 6 last year, 6 across his whole career, man. So absolutely not. Dolphins, you want to do that? Fine. And they have an inside track, I would imagine. So with all the Green Bay action happening down there, feel free. But no, give me.
I do have some news for you. You do actually have to have a starting quarterback next year.
You do.
That, right?
Oh well.
Okay.
That's the problem. You got to have somebody.
Which, by the way, this was it. Jeremy Fowler does this like anonymous piece where he talks to league sources around the league, and their bold prediction was here. These 3 quarterback names are going to be available for the Jets. They can potentially sift through them. And I'm like, oh, great. Who are these 3? Geno Smith reunion, Jets Giants legend, of course. Okay, there you go. Kyler Murray. And then the other one was Tua. Just stay in the division, Tua. Where
you might be able to get Kyler for a pretty small price. Now, and you have the cap space to absorb him, so that might actually be the path. To be honest with you,
I'd be open to some Brock Osweiler action. Oh, the Dolphins want to give us a 2 to eat the contract. I'm willing to dance. Right. You want to dance a little? Sure.
Tua, you might be able to get a pick with him. I'm not sure you're getting a pick to take Kyler Murray. I think
probably not. No. Yeah, so Kyler's probably the name there.
Oh boy. John Schmeelk. Yeah, they got other problems down that other hallway in the Meadowlands there to solve. We got our own problems and they got theirs. John Schmeelk, always appreciate the time, my friend. Always great to check in with you. Thanks for carving a little out for us today.
Love you guys. Always happy to be on with you, man. Good seeing you.